Welcome back. It is episode 128 technically, but then it's episode 2 of All or Nothing. I am joined today by Connor Walsh. Thanks for being here, man.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, Jacob.
It is my pleasure. Also, it is my pleasure to say that this podcast is directly sponsored by Ped Test Australia and Bulk Gym Chalk. There is a bit to talk about today. So we've got a few things, 4 different segments we're going to go through. But the first thing we're going to mention is the giveaway that we're doing. So I recently took on a sponsorship from Rockingham Supplement Mart, in case you can't tell maybe. And I decided that instead of being selfish, I wanted to give back to other people. So we're going to do that with a whole bunch of shit that relates to what we're talking about. One of the main things being recovery, and probably one of the other ones, hydration. So I managed to get a hold of a few things. One of them being creatine, which I think is probably, would you say this would be maybe the best studied or one of the best studied supplements?
Without doubt, the most studied supplement available in kind of your broad sports nutrition supplement area, without a doubt.
There you go. And this one's by Red Dragon, which sounds cool.
Yeah, it goes faster.
Yeah, it does go faster technically. We got some aminos by Rule 1. Now, aminos aren't necessarily something that are hugely important, and in some cases they don't really contain anything great. But at the same time, if it's got salt in it and it tastes all right and you can mix it with your water, probably not a bad thing for hydration. There's different mixtures and things like that can be better, but I don't know.
This is an essential amino acid product too, not a branched chain amino acid. So I actually look, it's certainly not something you need in a diet, but I do find essential amino acids can be a good addition if you have some spare money to spend, and would always choose essential amino acids over branched chain amino acids.
Another great point. I don't think I've bought branched chain amino acids before. I think I've been given sachets, but yeah, I don't think I've ever bought them.
Yeah, honestly, I think branched chain amino acids are quite possibly one of the largest niche scams to hit the market. And I think most people now are beginning to become well enough educated that you'll see a lot of your large formulations have swapped over from branched chain products to a complete essential amino acid product. But I remember 7-8 years ago, there was a thing. If you didn't have your branched chains intro, you go on catabolic, you're losing all your gains.
It's true. It's true. I mean, you still will lose all your gains if you don't have a protein shake 20 minutes afterwards, though, right?
That is true.
Good.
That's why I'm looking small today. I forgot mine yesterday.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jacob.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm just trying to not make him feel bad about himself. But it's okay. We'll get him some protein. We also have magnesium here. Now, I went for the pillar magnesium. It's in pill form as well. They did have a powder. Be interested to kind of touch on that with you as well. But I just thought pills seemed to be more most people friendly. Sometimes powders, people kind of don't.
They're a hassle.
Yeah, it can be a hassle.
Yeah.
Right? Pills are a little bit easier. You think there's a massive difference in the absorption?
No, next to none.
There you go. It's given the Connor tick of approval. I was also able to then get hold of this here. It's D3 Sport Effect, which sounds great as well for bone strength. So basically just a vitamin D supplement.
There's a small bit of calcium in there as well.
A small bit of cat.
It doesn't list it on the nutritional label, but it is in the ingredients list.
They do, yeah. It's there's vegetable oil in it as well.
Ooh, that one's controversial.
Is it really?
Well, with some of the Instagram fitness gurus, not with me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care much because I think it must be a pretty small amount in that thing right there. But
yeah, look, even if it was a fairly large amount, what a lot of the seed oil fearmongers are talking is, quite frankly, just a load of bullshit anyway.
There you go.
And I mean, one of the ways to fix some of the so-called damages of seed oils being pro-inflammatory is simply to consume more omega-3s, which we are about to talk about anyway.
Who's running the podcast? Because I don't think it's fucking me anymore. All right, Connor's in the booth. All right, Connor's in
Yeah.
Hold on, we got one.
Hey! There it is.
New improved sound effects as well. Sponsored. They're not even sponsors.
No, we just found them.
We just found them on this thing. I didn't even realize they were on
They're
here.
here to stay now.
They're fucking definitely here to stay. I'm pressing the shit out of this thing. Is that? I think that is pretty much all of it. And the last one, as Connor said, is omega-3s. We just got this some fish oil here. So, I mean, I kind of chucked this one last minute. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, you know what? That's just a great one for everyone.
Yep.
Most cases.
Yep.
So we are going to get in and talk about that. But lastly, what you are also going to get in this giveaway is I've had Zoe reach out. She does remedial massage in Rockingham. She does Quinana Physiotherapy, I think, is the place that it's done primarily, but then Smith Fitness in Port Kennedy is where she's working out of, and wanted to get involved with the podcast. So she has offered up her services. 45 minutes of remedial massage. You can't go wrong with that. You know what I mean? If you're sore, why not? Sort that out. You've got all these supplements here you could also be using. And Sam has offered up the sauna at Power Pit as well. So if you want to get all the crap out of you and, you know, get some cardiovascular benefits and just sweat because you like it. I mean, maybe not because you like it. Maybe not like Connor is enjoying it right now. But we've got a fan. It's kind of a half and half
When you're
thing.
120 kilos, life is a sauna. I get all the cardiovascular benefits.
This would not be a fitness podcast if at least one of us didn't give a body weight update in there somewhere. So I just gave a physique update before this.
You did.
Body weight update. You know what I mean? I'm sure Maggie's going to throw out her macros at some point. You know, like, we got to do it.
700 grams of protein.
700. Nobody's shitting around here. Or if you are shitting, it's just not a good time. The very last thing is thirst trap. All right. I have spoken to these guys again recently. They've got a sparkling water that's going to come our way. Hold on. Let's get it right in there. Listen to that. It's beautiful. Maggie's just cracked hers as well. Here we go. Oh, God, that's fresh water.
Yeah, that's good.
That's fucking... Yeah, right there, thirst trap. All right, you got me. If you're listening in your car and that scared the shit out of you, I'm sorry.
We don't actually apologise. We are unapologetic for that.
Connor's got more testosterone than me, so I'm apologising, but Connor's then not apologising for me.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the giveaways. We've talked about that now. So we're going to go into omega-3s. It's going to be our first topic. I'm still getting educated on this with Connor, so it'll be a fun learning experience for me as well as you. Where would you like to start, sir? What even is omega-3?
Okay, well, omega-3s are an essential fatty acid, or one of the forms of omega-3 in alpha-linolenic acid is the essential form of omega-3 fatty acids. What we're going to focus more on today is EPA and DHA, which are the two forms of omega-3 with the most role in the human body. These are solely found from cold water marine animals. If you're happy to eat meats and whatnots, your fish, shellfish, those type of things. If you're one of those people who are not willing to eat meat, then you can still source these from things like your algae. It is a little bit harder to get your dietary EPA and DHA in if you're not a meat eater, but there are still ways around it if you have dietary preferences not to eat meat.
Just on that, how algae? So how would someone consume it through that? Like, what are forms that you can buy that in?
Well, I would probably recommend supplemental form. I wouldn't go eating algae out of your local lake or whatever.
But technically, you would be getting it if you did that?
Look, I mean, technically, you probably would be getting it in. I can't confirm if 100% of every algae species in existence contains EPA and DHA. I would imagine the majority do, but I would also imagine there's quite a few other harmful things swimming around in your local lake or whatever.
Risk versus
if you
reward.
were just going to go down and eat your algae, because I don't know, you don't want to buy a supplement. I'd probably stick to supplements.
Buy the supplement sounds like more practical. And if you were just talking food,
well, if you eat meat, then obviously pretty much all of your seafood is going to provide at least a moderate to high amounts. Your fattier cuts of meats like your salmons, your sea trouts, stuff like that is going to provide a lot more relative to your leaner meats, like, for example, your freshwater bass, and some more of your white lean fishes typically won't provide as much EPA and DHA just because they're an overall leaner fish, though there is still a decent amount. Most people, even if you were consuming lean fish, you're still going to hit your daily requirements of EPA and DHA. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a really fatty fish like a salmon. You're just getting a little bit more bang for your buck.
Interesting. Okay.
And along come with the fats, you also get your fat-soluble vitamins like your A, E, D, and K, which I typically find to be fairly deficient in most general population clients as well.
Okay. And so back onto the role of omega-3s, probably one of the most, as far as I'm aware, larger benefits is for the heart.
Yep, heart, definitely one of the bigger benefits. There's a lot of that's another thing. Omega-3s are very in the forefront of science right now, so there's a lot of new studies coming out about benefits in different regions of the body. Heart and cardiovascular fitness being one big area. Another one that has been kind of studied quite heavily recently is mental performance, delaying things like Alzheimer's. There is inflammatory roles in omega-3s in preventing inflammation and lowering systemic inflammation as well. And that is where a lot of your fear-mongering from the omega-6 seed oil crowd comes from. In saying, where you've got the fitness influencers saying that seed oils are terrible. It's typically because the omega-6s tend to be more inflammatory. Again, there's nothing wrong. You need omega-6s in your diet. And I don't want to agree with the fear-mongering seed oil people in that there's anything wrong with the seed oils, but we do typically have a much higher omega-6 concentration of fat in our diets just as standard. Many of us don't consume any omega-3s, and especially not EPA and DHAs. There's not too many people you see regularly consuming fish or any seafood. And having a higher omega-6 to 3 ratio can lead to more levels of inflammation in the body. And now I don't personally think it is the correct thing to go out demonizing these seed oils because there's nothing solely wrong with them per se. I would much rather come from the front of just telling people to eat more omega-3s to help try balance out that 3 to 6 ratio when most of us are under consuming the omega-3s in the first place and missing out on a lot of the benefits that come with the omega-3 consumption, as we've talked about with the heart and the brain and whatnot. So,
is it true that maybe not excess, but a larger consumption of fish oil supplements can thin your blood?
yeah, there is definitely a blood thinning effect of fish oil. It's something that we'll actually ask you to stop if you're going in for a procedure that's involving any cutting of anything open due to the blood thinning effect. Obviously, people are going to have different risk profiles depending on other factors, like if you're already on an existing blood thinner or maybe aspirin or something like that. There may be some risks posed. I wouldn't typically be concerned for most healthy individuals about consuming even large doses of fish oil, to be completely honest. But if you have some kind of blood clotting or just general blood disease or anything like that, which changes the way your blood operates and functions, then certainly something you should probably check with your doctor if there can be some interactions. But if you're a healthy, fit individual, then it's not something I would really have any concern over. So,
okay. And in terms of quality and source,
yes, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's a big one. So we talked about this before, and maybe we could use this as an example. I'd found this on iHerb, or this may have been the one you sent to me. I think it might have been.
It's one of the ones I like, yeah.
Yeah, and so could we maybe talk about this one, for instance, and we won't maybe talk about the other one we have just so we're not comparing. Maybe this one compared to, say, just your average one that would be in a supermarket.
Well, look, honestly, for most clients, fish oil can be, and I think Jacob's actually one that's complained about this with me, more of a pain to consume than anything, just due to the large volume of capsules that you generally have to swallow.
Look, I haven't complained, okay? I've just said that some of them are too big and they hurt my throat because I'm sensitive.
Jacob doesn't swallow.
I swallow if I really, really care about the person. If there's a large connection.
He doesn't care about me enough.
It's not that I don't care about Connor. We're just not there yet in our relationship. Surely you guys can understand, right? All it is that they have the, I can't remember what, maybe are they 1,500 or something like that? But you know the other ones, that they're large milligram.
Yeah.
And they're actually massive, those ones.
Yeah.
Those ones are actually the biggest pills I've seen, where these are just all general. They're still big.
Yeah.
But yeah. Like I don't struggle to these ones. The other big ones I found were a bit much.
Yeah, so look, if the first thing I look at for the omega-3s just comes down to an ease of use thing. As I mentioned, I will get a lot of clients and people that I put omega-3 on that just honestly can't adhere to it for long periods of time because they get sick of swallowing 5 or 6 massive horse pills per serving. So one of the easiest things I look at is just the ratio of EPA and DHA. Oh, sorry, not the ratio, rather the total amount of EPA and DHA within the product relative to the amount of capsule and tablet that you're having to consume. So that just obviously to make it a little bit easier for you in terms of the amount of tablet swallowing that you're having to do. Long-term adherence is going to be more important than having the best product that you say take 2 days a week because you can't be bothered swallowing the big tablets. So that's the first thing I look at. Not super interesting, easy for anyone to do. You just look at the ingredient label, add the EPA and DHA content together against the total fish oil milligram. If you really wanted to, you could work out a percentage and then pick the highest percentage product, but you should be able to get a pretty good gauge of kind of your bang for buck per capsule by looking at the oil to EPA and DHA ratio. It's not something I typically get into as deep. It's far down your kind of nutritional hierarchy of importance. But the second thing that you would look at would probably be the EPA and DHA ratio. Things like, I believe it is EPA has shown to have less of an increase on blood pressure. So if you're someone who potentially is someone that struggles with borderline hypertension or full-blown hypertension, you may consider potentially consuming a little bit more EPA over DHA. But typically, I would say most products consume more than enough EPA to DHA when looking at a standard fish oil formula. I would actually say most fish oil, obviously granted, you're going to have individual differences, but most products, I would say, if anything, are probably slightly low on the DHA side to EPA side. Though, to be completely honest, the science and whatnot about some of those ratios is still very wishy-washy, and certainly not as concrete as some of the other information we have coming forward about omega-3 now. So if you want to get down the rabbit hole, you can start looking at EPA and DHA ratios, though, if you're completely honest, it's not something I look at with too many of my clients. 1 or 2 people I do discuss it with, but they're people that are quite advanced and have everything else down pat, and we can start toying with some of these smaller variables, but I don't think that's really relevant for too many people.
Okay. I think that's a good wrap up of segment 1. I feel like omega-3s are probably something we're going to have to revisit because you can probably forever talk about them, but that's a good overall.
And there's so much new stuff coming out about them as well. I think just previously very poorly understood. And I think the benefits of adequate omega-3 intake has started to become very well known, and science is very much pushing the studying and investigation of it now. So I'm sure the next time that me and Jacob catch up for a podcast, there'll probably be 5 new studies about different benefits of omega-3 and what have come out. So
there you go. Maybe we can talk about one of those and discuss those things. We're going to call that the end of segment 1, and maybe a slight intermission. Do you want a sweat towel?
I love a sweat towel.
Maggie, could you get Connor a sweat towel, please? Could you the sweat towel? Could you get?
Are you able to pat my forehead dry?
Are you able to hold on? This is going to be our sweat towel intermission. Yeah, we just need it. Yeah, wipe them down. That's beautiful.
There we go.
It's good. We're good. Thank you, mate. All right. That was nice.
I hope that doesn't get cut out.
That's not getting
That
cut
was funny.
out. That's staying right in there. That's You'll be compensated, Maggie, right? I know that was a lot.
No, how much do I pay you?
All right. So that towel is going to be at least 500 grams heavier.
Well, we're auctioning that towel afterwards. There is an entire cycle in that towel.
That's part of the next giveaway.
Yeah, that is the next giveaway.
That's the next giveaway. So what we're going to do next is simply just because we've got the supplements here, we're going to go straight into it because it's in front of me. We wanted to talk about sleep. Now, it's so much to go into with sleep, and neither of us are sleep scientists, so we're just going to have certain things to say. I'm pretty big on environment, and that's something I look into a lot, and so that's kind of something where I want to weigh in a little bit more as well. But first, we could get kind of to talk about magnesium. So I think in this one, we'll talk about environment and magnesium because they're probably the main two things that are the easiest to control if you think about it, right? Your environment, how you sleep, where you sleep, when you sleep, who you sleep around, who you sleep with. You know, they might not be relevant, but it might be something you need to focus on. Okay, I like to think about it. You know what I mean? At the moment, no one. You know, well, one person, obviously my partner, but then no one. Sometimes Connor, but then no one else. All right. So, magnesium. I don't know. Is this a mag? No, this one is. Tell us a little bit about this one, Connor. You have to look at the bottle to make it look like you're, really paying attention to this specific
Triple magnesium.
triple magnesium. Right.
All right. So as far as magnesium goes, magnesium is obviously very important in many different functions. Magnesium is a mineral. It's one of the electrolytes. Magnesium has a big role on things like central nervous system calming. So that's where a lot of the sleep sides of things for the magnesium, more so in a magnesium deficient state, you'll have an interruption of your ability to effectively calm your nervous system. It's not something where it's like, just keep taking magnesium and the more you take, the more you'll sleep better. More of that comes down to simply not being deficient in magnesium and ensuring you have adequate magnesium intake rather than trying to get to like super physiological levels of magnesium.
Can that, just to weigh in there, that can actually have the opposite effect in some cases as well for people. Is that right?
Yeah, look, I'm sure like almost all vitamins and especially minerals, you do reach a threshold in which it's almost like a bell curve type thing. The way in which that bell is shaped is different for many different minerals and vitamins, but there is a sweet spot for nearly everything. So if you want to consume, you're not going to get the most benefit out of it, and if you overconsume it, there are certain things that you can overconsume with no real fear of doing so, but most things you do have a threshold where still if you start to consume too much, you start to see kind of results and stuff go back the other way. So there is definitely a point of no return with magnesium where if you just continue taking more, you're either not going to get any more benefit or potentially even see less benefit from that magnesium, but that is very hard to do, and a very, very large percentage of us are magnesium deficient in the first place. So you've got things like magnesium citrate, and then yeah.
What's the other one?
So glycinate would probably
Glycinate,
be the most popular. There's a few different forms: bisglycinate, glycinate. There's one other, which is, I believe, a variation of the glycine attachment to the actual magnesium. So part of the equation, and if I would put a number on it, I'd say something like 85 to 90% of the equation of the magnesium and its help for sleeping comes down to just being at an adequate level, and that having an impact on controlling basically regulation of the nervous system. And then if you want to get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty, you can start looking at what form of magnesium you're consuming. Things like your magnesium glycinates. Now, I don't 100% hold me to this, but the glycine that is attached to the actual magnesium molecule itself is able to have some, I believe, 99% sure on this, has some interplay with the GABA system, which has a calming effect again on our nervous system. So this is why it's not necessarily that the magnesium from the magnesium glycinate is a special magnesium form, or that you're getting way more magnesium or anything like that. The actual molecule bonded to the magnesium, the glycinate, is able to have some impact on the GABA system, which adds an extra calming effect to the overall magnesium glycinate, as opposed to just the magnesium portion and topping up the your magnesium status within the body.
And so what about things like salt baths and magnesium?
As in like Epsom salts, magnesium salts?
Yeah. What are your opinion on those?
If you are doing them as a means of consuming adequate electrolytes, then I think you are missing the point. An Epsom salt bath from time to time can certainly be a relaxing thing. I mean, if you're sore potentially or whatnot, there can be some place for that. Though I would not recommend them as a way of topping up dietary magnesium intake per se. I would much prefer magnesium intake either come from real dietary sources or oral supplementation. I mean, IV supplementation as well. You get them in drips and whatnot if you really want to be that hardcore. But
You do the IV sometimes, right?
I mean, not unless I end up in hospital or something.
No? Or you've never
Oh,
done
look,
that?
I mean, after a weigh-in, I definitely look. Yeah, for sure, yeah. After a weigh-in, I will be on a drip of some sort. I typically will have 2 different solutions of drips for my first and second bags if I've done a big cut. And the second bag, I do typically infuse a little bit of magnesium with that second drip bag as well, yeah.
Does she feel good?
It's just replenishing, I mean, especially obviously in a situation like where you've done a big weight cut for a powerlifting meet and you've loaded water, potentially done things like distilled water, which have stripped electrolytes from your body, possibly even taken diuretics, which are throwing out your electrolyte balance. It's obviously important that you're making sure you're retopping up your electrolytes in that situation in a very timely manner. And the IV fluid just ensures that you're getting kind of 100% bioavailability and as quick as absorption as possible. So with the IV drips and electrolyte rehydrations, though, that is not something that you just do without any education, especially if there's been diuretics involved, especially pharmaceutical ones that manipulate potassium. That's where you start to see some potentially life-threatening issues start to get involved with weight cuts and incorrect rehydration protocols, throwing electrolyte levels out to severe points where you start seeing people have heart attacks and stuff like that. So,
Interesting. Something we can maybe delve into in another, segment.
yeah, for sure.
We'll move on to environment because I'd say that's arguably, I don't know, let's put more percentages on it.
If you're sweating like we are now, you're not going to sleep very well.
No, 80. Let's do what Connor did before and say 85 to 90% is environment. It has to be to an extent, right? Because it's just like you might have sleep problems, and that's not what we're talking about. But if we're talking about whether it's magnesium versus environment, you know what I mean? The environment is probably most people's problem, right?
Yep.
It's being on their phone too much before they sleep. It's being in a room that's fucking got lights everywhere in it. Maybe you leave the hallway light on, that gives you more light. Maybe there's light coming from outside, and all of a sudden your room isn't really dark at all. So going through those sorts of things, like let's put it all the way down to like maybe the first one being light. I don't know if you've ever slept in a room that's got roller shutters, but that shit is life changing.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I stayed at a friend's house probably 6 months ago now, and it was incredible. Like I would wake up feeling amazing, and like I would have no idea if it was 2 a.m. or fucking 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And so dark is a big thing, and it's something I struggle with because I'm not necessarily in a position in my life right now where I can always control that variable. Is there something that you take into account, or something once again you don't have too much control over?
Look, I don't have as much control over my sleep as I would like to. It's definitely my largest downfall, I would say, as an athlete, if you can call me that. But like anything that I can control, I do definitely try to control. I definitely make sure my room is as dark as possible. We even do things around the house like using lower lights that are in the evening setting, using lower hanging lights. It has less of a disruption on your circadian biology. If you kind of look at it simply, a rising sun would be coming above the eyes, and your body biologically sees that as time to wake up. So when you have lots of light fixtures coming from above you, that can effectively disrupt your biological clock and confuse it for potentially thinking it needs to wake up when in fact it's time for you to start winding down and getting ready for bed. And I do also think that whole circadian biology sounds very cuckoo, and I will admit, up until a few years ago, despite the fact that there is whole scientific branches of research dedicated to circadian biology, I just brushed it off as a little bit of a cuckoo la la land type thing. But light exposure and really dialing in circadian rhythms, I honestly found to be massive improvements in energy levels and sleep quality once doing some things like getting up and making sure you seek sun early in the morning. And it really kind of pisses me off. Recently, I've actually seen some mocking of some Instagram influencers that like to do the real dumbing down of the fitness industry and shit on anything anybody says that is nuanced. and just mocking people getting up and getting early sunlight. But truly, it is one of the things that I found was one of the largest changing factors in my daily energy levels was being up earlier before the sun, getting good sunlight, and also just my ability to kind of stay in a constant sleep pattern as well. So, yeah, it might sound a little bit cuckoo, light, all that type of stuff, but it makes a huge difference. And I think anyone, if they actually put a few months into truly trying to be aware and change their circadian biology, that I don't think there'd be many people that don't see a huge improvement by taking into consideration some of those things.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a huge factor. And once again, when we're talking about lights, being on your phone, that's a light, right? So
Sure.
That's probably the most overlooked one because it's easy to darken everything in your house. But let's face it, people sit and watch TV. There's almost always something that's stimulating in that kind of way. So lights are probably one of the easiest ones that we can control, but probably the ones that we control the least, or average people do at least. The other one that I would mention would be hygiene, because it's something you can control.
For sure.
So making sure that something I didn't do when I was like 15, I was like, wait, you got to wash bed linens?
Yeah. For some of us, it's very lucky we have girlfriends to take care of that.
I mean, for me, in certain times, I have to do my own, and it's something I remember to do now because I kind of got in the habit of it. But when you're younger, I just think I was a huge stoner as well, so I
Yeah.
just didn't give a shit. But hygiene is a huge one. It's not good for sleep health, right? Like it can, for a start, you sleeping in a bunch of bed linens that smell really, really bad.
Especially if you're a big sweaty individual.
I'm not going to point anyone out, but so that's going to keep you awake, right? Everything you're like laying in is going to feel drier. It's probably going to cause like skin irritation. You're going to feel like you're like laying in mess, which is going to be distracting. If you've got a high sense of smell, that's probably going to bother you, keep you awake as well. And overall, I just think that it's another easy one that you can control, because if you just do it every, say, like week or two when you wash your bed linens, that's like an easy one to do.
And it's free.
And it's free, It's not as good as triple magnesium, but it's still good. The other one to mention is how you sleep. So I house sitted for someone a little while ago, two people that I know who don't really take their health into consideration a whole lot, but I was very impressed with their bed. They only had one pillow each, and it was an extremely firm mattress, which we know now is a lot better for you than something that feels like a cloud. We want to lay in the cloud. It feels like we want to lay in the cloud, and I definitely think it varies from person to person. But for the most part, firm mattresses are actually better for you to sleep on. And you should, and this is something I learned through having neck and shoulder problems, should really try and keep your head in line with your neck, right? So jamming 2 or 3 pillows under your neck and sleeping like this is not really great.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that kind of way?
Yeah, look, I completely agree with all that. I have sleep apnea, so sleeping position in terms of people with sleep apnea does also have an extra degree of importance because certain positions can cause more of an obstruction of that airway. A lot of sleep apnea suffering individuals will find that sleeping on their side provides a better sleep due to less obstruction of the sleep airway or of the throat, effectively closing your sleep area and your airway and ability to breathe when you relax. So that, if you're kind of on that borderline area, which I know a lot of people are, where they're kind of snoring and they're getting pretty good sleep, but they're starting to wake up a few times and have a little bit more of a broken sleep, not quite at a point where it may not be quite worth it for going for a CPAP, because it is quite an invasive, it's an extremely invasive kind of measure to go to fix these type of things. And I know a lot of people are going to do everything in their power to stay away from that if they can. So if you're sitting in that kind of no man's land where you're not bad enough yet where a CPAP is required, but you are suffering a little bit of sleep apnea, something like a sleeping position, sleeping on the side is definitely a good tool that you can use to alleviate some of that choking throughout the night. For me, I am on a CPAP now, and I've had quite a few back issues throughout my career. So something I really made big a few years back when I was kind of first starting to deal with all the back issues was just sleeping symmetrically. And for me, that meant just trying to stay on my back, just flat in a line with a low pillow, like Jacob said, a soft single pillow, so that I'm not, on my side with one leg out to the left and flailed everywhere and creating potential imbalances in that spinal area. So back sleeping in a neutral spinal position with a symmetrical kind of limb positioning from left to right was something I really focused on, just to try and alleviate any potential reasons of waking up sore or with anything twinged or whatever, especially whilst dealing with some of those back injuries, just to remove some of those risk factors for me as well.
Yeah, a big one would probably be like even shoulders, right? So some people will sleep on their side with their arms sort of in this position, but I've had problems in the past where I'll sleep with it above my head or out in front of me like this, which is not great really for shoulders. They don't like to be in that position for 8 hours with you leaning on them. So that's definitely something to take into consideration, and Connor was obviously able to provide a different perspective there, which may relate to more people, which is good. I got tested for sleep apnea and didn't have it, and even the little bit that I did, I was given the advice that Connor just gave then. Well, basically, the lady that had given me the results had said if I was to give you one, I actually believe it would be more of a disruption to your sleeping. So I would recommend you don't do it.
Yeah.
The other thing is food. Everybody's different with this one, and I feel like there's probably some science behind it, but I also just think it's person to person. I like to go to sleep on a full stomach, but they kind of say that you shouldn't because you're digesting stuff. When I say they, I just mean some random people have said it one time, right? So some people have said don't do it because you're digesting a lot and it will be harder to sleep. I find the opposite problem. If I go to sleep hungry, it feels like shit. What do you think?
Agreed, yep. I think almost... And look, unless obviously you're in an extremely calorically restricted state, in that case, you're probably going to end up going to bed hungry a few times. I would definitely always be aiming to be going to bed full, if not even just from a sleep point of view, from the point of view of you're about to be fasting for the next 6 to 10 hours, depending on your schedule, and not eating again. So, look, I personally find, especially if you've got a decent amount of carbohydrates that you can consume, a larger bolus of carbohydrates before bed tends to actually promote better quality of sleep. And that goes all against all no carbs after 6 p.m. crew, but I wouldn't be concerned about that whatsoever. I would take sleep quality over any 1% changes in glucose metabolism and insulin levels and whatnot that you get from possibly having a larger carbohydrate bolus before bed. But yeah, look, it is going to be a little bit person to person, but given the majority of people listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume related in kind of strength or physique, have strength or physique outcome goals. I would 100% still be advocating for having a meal within relative proximity to bedtime, if not only for improvements in sleep from some of the downstream hormonal cascades you get from things like your carbohydrate boluses, but also just from a nutritional standpoint of making sure that you've got a good amount of of substrate there for your body to use for whatever it needs it to use during the time that you're fasting while you're asleep.
Yeah, carbs are good for that as well as I find if you train in the morning, it can be really helpful as well because people seem to think that you need 150 grams of carbs before you work out, which everyone's different, and that there's nothing wrong with doing that either. But for an average person who's probably not being extremely athletic, maybe you just train like 3 days a week, you'd be surprised at just what 50 to 100 grams of carbs before you go to sleep can do for you in the morning. Yep. Some people can do that and then train fasted simply because they still have something in their system for when they train. And, everyone feels different in that regard because obviously those people could be consuming caffeine and there could be different variables. Maybe they still have carbohydrates in the morning, but they don't feel like they need to have as many because they do have something in their body from before they went to sleep. How long they slept, there's many different things. But I find that to be an interesting topic as well with what Connor mentioned because I definitely like to go to sleep with something in my stomach, but also like it needs to be carbs. Like it's protein's good as well, but if I think it definitely affects sleep. For me personally, that's one thing I notice as well, and I definitely sleep worse if I did I did the ketogenic diet for like 2 months once, and it was probably the worst my sleep was for at least the first month anyway. Probably just because I was adapting as well, but it kind of got a little bit better after that period of time. But personally, I've noticed a massive difference in my sleep. One of the other things I wanted to mention as well, down the list of things that we were talking about, was who you sleep next to. Annoyingly enough, there's a fair bit of evidence that I know you probably love your $6,000 French Bulldog, but probably shouldn't sleep with it on your bed. And it would be great if it was the okay thing to do. The general consensus now seems to be from people that you shouldn't let your animals sleep on your bed.
That is the general consensus, and I'm going to say this is maybe one time you don't listen to scientists. No, I'm just joking. I do agree with that, but sometimes you have to draw a line between happiness and optimal.
No, hang on a second, because you were just talking about shoveling 10 fucking fish oil things. Hold on a second. So that's okay.
Don't bring me up for that one.
Now look, we're here to talk about both sides, right? I agree with Connor, okay? Because this is the thing. You enjoy your life, but if you're having problems with your sleep, right, and you're looking at the things that could be affecting it, if your dog likes to fucking get up and walk around on the bed 6 times a night and it wakes you up, it's something you should take into consideration.
For sure.
It's like that if it's getting to a point where it's bothering you that much.
And also going back to the hygiene area that we talked about at the start, it is obviously, if your dog's sleeping in your bed, your hygiene by default is not going to be real great in your sleeping environment. So you're getting kind of your double negative there with the pets. So look, if you're really trying to maximize sleep performance, then 100% you probably don't want to have your pets in your bed. I personally don't. I sleep with my partner though as well. And it would just be, I think, a little bit of a nightmare with an extra pet in the bed. And we have 2 dogs, so, discriminating there would be unfair. And having 2 dogs and me and my partner in the bed would probably be a hot, sweaty mess, because it's hot and sweaty if it's just me by myself.
Well, this is the other thing.
Yes.
Sleeping next to people.
Yes.
Is also part of the issue.
Yes, especially if your girlfriend's always always cold and you're always hot.
Yeah.
That's a real problem.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be. Yeah, and so that's body temperatures and the differing between them is part of that. People roll around in their sleep, right? So I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever probably slept next to someone before that maybe didn't wake me up, but I have almost probably in every case in my life, whether it was a different relationship I'd been in or I'd shared a bed with, maybe when I was younger and you and your cousins have a movie night or something, someone always wakes you up, right? And it's like, it's not always the case, but it depends on what kind of sleeper you are. So it kind of makes sense just from that, right? We know that like sometimes you sleep next to someone and they can wake you up. Maybe that person snores. So having someone next to you from a practical sense can do that. But then there's those factors as well. If you're running at different temperatures, if maybe they have like restless legs, you know what I mean? Maybe they move around a little bit. Those things can impact it. And overall, as much as we don't want to look at science, and happiness is important, sleep next to your girlfriend, of course, unless you get in trouble and you're in the doghouse and you're on the couch, then you might
have great sleep quality for the night.
So that's basically the advice we're giving you here. Have a great day with your missus up until 8 p.m. and then do whatever you can to get in the doghouse so you can have a good night's sleep.
All the gains.
All the gains, right? She'll be upset, but you will get bigger and stronger by the fucking minute. So they're probably like the main ones with sleep. I mean, is there anything you can think of?
Probably room temperature would be the other big one I could touch on, and something that's quite easily changeable for most of us. One of the biggest factors in us falling asleep is our bodies dropping in temperature. Without that drop in temperature, your ability to fall asleep quickly and stay asleep is not going to be very good. So this is where if you do have varying temperatures with your partner, it can become a real problem. Because if your body temperature is staying elevated, you're biologically just not going to be able to fall asleep efficiently. Your body is not wired to sleep when body temperature is at its highest. It has downstream effects that effectively tell your body that it's still time to work and stay awake. So yeah, having a relatively cool room. If you're unsure on where to set your room temperature, I would opt on the side of being cooler. You can always warm yourself up with a doona or whatnot. But yeah, the drop in body temperature is a big factor in sleep quality and the onset of sleep. So probably one of the easiest things that you can do in terms of adjusting your environment. I mean, most of us have air conditioners these days. Just turn your aircon down another degree or two. And I think a lot of people will probably find that they see an improvement in both onset and quality of sleep if they were to just set their room temperature slightly cooler.
There you go. And Connor's probably an extreme example because
Extreme example.
he's always hot. And always. But
Professional sweater.
professional sweater. We're going to leave the sleep there, but we are probably going to come back to this at some point. And next time, I think we might touch on melatonin because I've had some interesting experience with that in my time being a human being, which I am.
I also have strong opinions on melatonin.
Boom. I almost want to talk about it now, but we'll move on because otherwise we won't get to the other things we're going to talk about. We will revisit.
Tune in next time.
Tune in next time, right? What we're going to do is go on to, there was one other one. I'm going to have to check it now just quickly. There was one other one real quickly. Where was it? I'm just going to scroll. We might actually, would you like another towel break?
Yeah, go on.
Here we go. Maggie, can we get that? Here we go. Just while I'm scrolling.
I'll stand to go to the toilet. Do I have an assistant for that?
All right. We're getting just a bit of a towel cleaning for Connor here. The man needs it. He's getting the wipe down.
Right. Fantastic.
All good? Fantastic. All right. Thank you again, Maggie. So we are going to, this is actually quite funny because we're now going to move into something that I'm not saying Connor has an issue with, but if you were to look at Connor, you would maybe assume that he might have issues in this area.
Jacob knows I don't have an issue with this.
He doesn't have issues. And look, some people have issues with it.
I've showed Jacob my blood pressure. He just doesn't show me his.
I
want to know how big his is.
Mine is not big. I told you what mine is the other day. If anything, it was a little bit low. Well, no,
it's
hang
the
on.
perfect size.
It's the look. All that matters is that it's not really, really, really high.
Yeah.
All right. If it's 1 point over, things can be okay, I think. But we'll explore that. We're going to keep it simple in terms of just blood pressure itself. I want to talk about just a few things. We went on about sleep for about 20 minutes, so we'll try to keep this to a nice quick tenor. And I want to basically talk about. I want you to describe just kind of, I guess, what like blood pressure is from a easy, like say if you were trying to explain it to someone who was like, explain it to me in 30 seconds because I don't understand it at all. And then maybe we can just touch on like how often people should get it checked and when they should get it checked.
All right, so blood pressure is a measurement of the pressure that blood leaves under contraction and not under contraction in each, from the ventricle of the heart. The contraction being the systole and the other being the dystolic. It is standardized to the pressure at the same level as your heart. So if you take your blood pressure on your ankle or say leaning forward with the cuff lower than your heart or higher than your heart, it will give you a reading that will be correct, but a healthy blood pressure of 120 over 80 is assuming the fact that the blood pressure is taken at the same level of the heart. So if you have a wrist monitor and you're taking a blood pressure down by your side and you're wondering why it's extraordinarily high, that is because it's meant to be higher at that level. So one thing I do see quite commonly is just people incorrectly measuring their own blood pressure if they are doing it themselves. So one important thing to note is the cuff needs to be level with your heart when you are measuring it. Another one, while I'm on that one, if you're a lifter, your arms are probably bigger than average. You probably also need a larger cuff to get a correct reading. A regular cuff is just going to inflate too tight and give you an elevated systolic over what you actually have. So yeah, just ensuring you have correct equipment, sizing, and correct technique for taking your test is quite important.
So just quickly, size and technique are the most important.
Most important things.
That's the main thing. If you were to get a larger cuff, you can just get them from a chemist.
Yep. Most chemists will be able to provide you with pretty much everything you need for a blood pressure cuff. If you're really large, you may need to get them to order that in, but most chemists will have that in within a day or two. You can also buy all these things from like Amazon if you don't want to talk to pharmacists or whatever for whatever reason.
Amazon would probably be cheaper as well, I feel like.
Probably, yeah. As if you are looking at buying blood pressure and monitoring devices, I would stick with your major brands. Something like an Omron brand around the $150 to $200 mark is kind of where you're starting to get into that higher level of accuracy.
So how many times a week would you say it's different for athletes, but let's say it's an average person that should be checking their blood pressure?
Okay. Regular Joe Blow, completely average, normally, normal lifestyle, not consuming performance-enhancing drugs, anything like that. Look, just knowing where it is, say, I think most people probably do far less than this, but maybe once a month, just to get a gauge so you can see where trends are going. Your normal person's probably not worth stressing about checking their blood pressure every single day. It's something that varies from each point in time. If you're a little bit stressed and whatnot, you can have some elevations. If you've been moving around, it'll be elevated based compared to sitting stationary for 20 minutes or so.
So this is the other thing, right? When should someone take it? Because when I was doing it with someone a little while back, morning time when I first got up seemed to be the best time for me to take it. Otherwise, it varied a lot if I did it through the day.
Yeah. So, look, this changes again depending on who I'm dealing with. The majority of clients that I deal with are enhanced, and controlling of blood pressure is one of the most important things from a safety aspect in those individuals partaking in performance-enhancing drugs. So those individuals, I will have a bare minimum of 3 times per week I want it taken, and I want it taken at different times throughout the day generally, so that I'm getting a little bit of a variation in where blood pressure is sitting at different points in the day, different stress levels, whatnot. Again, I think it's a little overkill for your average person that's not partaking in such high risk activities on a frequent basis to have to take it every single day. But I do think people should have a rough ballpark of where they are and be able to at least track trends, so that if it's consistently starting to move towards the upside, check up to check up, that you at least know that there's something you potentially need to look out for. The current diet that most general pop people follow and exercise requirements as well are 100% leading to a high prevalence in hypertension.
And so what are things in that area that you could refer to? Like what kind of foods and diet is someone following to cause those sorts of problems?
So the lowest, probably the easiest thing that you can do is just going to be move more. Most people do not move enough, and completely putting diet aside, just getting some more exercise in, whether that be lifting some weights, doing a little bit of cardiovascular activity, is probably the single most important thing that you can do for helping manage blood pressure. And then, look, if you are overweight, as far as the diet side goes, getting your weight down to a more healthy body fat or just weight in general, even for those people who are quite, and potentially even for some people who are needing to be larger in the long run, dropping a percentage of your body weight to get blood pressure back under control sporadically throughout the year, I think is also a very good tool to use in managing blood pressure. Dropping the weight itself, even if you are well above what would be classed a healthy weight, say you're a super heavyweight powerlifter that needs to walk around at 150 kilos for the majority of the year, obviously dropping down to say 140 or 145 kilos is still well above what most people would class a healthy weight. But that drop in body weight there will still see a significant drop in blood pressure in everyone. I'd fail to see anyone that would not drop at least say 10 points systolic with say a 5 to 10 kilo body weight. So it's not necessarily that you have to chase the healthy body weight. If we're talking about people in that kind of open weight class free sports where you're having to push these higher body weights, but still running a period of the year where you are in a caloric deficit, which is going to have plenty of other benefits as well. But one of which is, well, the main area would be just controlling metabolic disease, and one aspect of the metabolic disease kind of equation is blood pressure. So dropping that will help with getting the blood pressure down. And then you look at some more nuanced areas of the diet, some micronutrient intake. Kind of the first area that I would look in terms of blood pressure manipulation, in terms of your micronutrients, would be your mineral profiles, and more specifically your electrolyte profiles. Sodium and potassium being your two biggest movers there. Things are going to change in terms of your ratio depending on other factors. Maybe certain performance enhancing drugs and whatnot do affect electrolyte retention in different ways. So the ways in which you kind of come to your end requirement of electrolytes may be a little different depending on your scenario. But that is probably your first thing that you would look at within diet beyond just calories and weight loss itself. And then a couple of other key points to look on beyond that would be some of your vitamin intakes. Vitamin E would be one, quite important for controlling blood pressure outside of your minerals. Magnesium is another one that is still a mineral and an electrolyte. It's another one that, especially if deficient, you'll see quite a few people have an increase in blood pressure as well. And as touched on earlier in the podcast, it is probably one of the most commonly deficient micronutrients across general population.
Where can you find most of it in food? What are your go-to sources?
Well, honestly, one of my largest dietary intake sources of magnesium is going to be a little bit out of left food, but I like a quite large amount of raw cocoa as part of my post-workout carbohydrate intake. I do about 25 grams of raw cocoa with 100 grams of honey and about 600 mils of skim milk, which provides me a large amount of carbohydrates with a meal that I also have with that. But the cocoa in that, I believe, comes out to around 220 milligrams of magnesium, which is not far off 50% of what the RDI would recommend as sufficient dietary magnesium intake. I personally do not believe that 400 milligrams of magnesium daily is sufficient for most athletic individuals, and I'd say probably most even just general pop individuals. But based on the government, that would get you to about half of what they recommend you consume magnesium-wise.
Interesting.
This is one area where now I've got one client, his name's Max. He proved me wrong. He was able to get 1,000 milligrams of potassium in quite comfortably with his dietary choices, which is...
Potassium or magnesium?
Magnesium, rather.
Yeah.
Potassium is very easy to get in. Magnesium is not as easy to get in, and the total that I like to shoot for with your athletic individuals, and especially your larger guys, is going to be between that 800 and 1,200 milligram per day mark, and I find it is extraordinarily hard to reach those levels of dietary magnesium intake purely through just dietary sources. If you're shooting for those kind of ranges, it is highly likely that you are going to need a magnesium supplement of some form to get to those levels. Again, Max proved me wrong on that. He was able to get, I think, about 1,100 milligrams of magnesium in on only, I think it was around 3,000, maybe 3,500 calories. So not a super, it's a decent amount of food, but not, it's not like a 6,000 calorie diet where, you've just got this bolus of calories coming in and you're just, kind of filling magnesium intake by just consuming a ton of food and getting enough trace in from different areas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Maximus McCall,
Maximus
episode
McCall.
97, I think. I might probably have that wrong. He was on here a little while back. Interesting. We're going to have to move on because we've got this last one to carry. I think we might need just a slight little towel break. Little towel break. Connor is losing magnesium by the second.
Yeah, I'm deficient now.
He's very deficient in it now. So we've got, lucky you've got the triple magnesium right next to you.
Sorry, whoever wins the intake.
Yeah.
or the
He's going to have to
giveaway.
scull
It's
it.
mine now.
We're going to have a little bit of an intermission for Connor's head. He's going to just We're just going to play this out. Here we go. Connor needs it. We're just getting it done. All right, we're good.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you. All right. Fantastic. I love these fucking buttons. Okay. So, lastly, shout out to Davkey43, Davekey43. Whoever you are, you've got a fucking hell of a moustache on you, my friend. Very impressive. L Carnitine Injections. When, why, how much?
Well,
We're running out of time, so don't try to less
Try to stay on topic.
Try to less tangenty.
All right. Look, carnitine is useful in many different situations, so it's very hard to give a single answer on this. Possibly, maybe on a future podcast, you could give us a little more detail on your own specific situation, and maybe we could tailor something a little bit more towards you. But I'll just answer it as a bit more of a general, things that it can be good for, and maybe a rough protocol rather than trying to individualize something without a bit more information. But in general, carnitine is going to benefit most people from an increased. Look, from the oral point of view, this doesn't seem to play out as well, but certainly on the injectable, where you're getting 100% bioavailability as opposed to 11 or 12%, I believe, with the oral, you will see an increase in fat burning ability or lipolization. My main benefits to carnitine with the people that I use it for is actually more from a health perspective. It has some extremely good ability to positively remodel cardiac tissue. So something that you find as, if you're familiar with any of the autopsies, for example, of some of the bodybuilders that have passed away, one of the more primary killers is hypertrophy of the heart, and specifically the left ventricle. The left ventricle being the last ventricle that contracts as blood is leaving the heart, and the one that has to basically contract under the most force to efficiently pump blood around the body. Due to being anaerobic athletes, consuming steroids, and having high body weights, the issues of ventricular hypertrophy get exacerbated amongst these populations, and carnitine is able to slow that if you're under all these risk factors, and even reverse it in situations where people have already begun to experience left ventricular hypertrophy. As I said, there are some definite performance-enhancing benefits. On top of the fat burning and the lipolytic effects, you also get an increase in both androgen receptor density and efficiency. So more androgen receptors, and the ability for androgen receptors to deal with and receive a signal from a hormone and pass it on to then transcribe its signal onto another receptor. So you're effectively able to get more out of either your own endogenous hormones or more out of your exogenous hormones that you're taking as part of your performance-enhancing drug cycle. And I will actually also add that L-carnitine is completely legal, completely fine for any drug-tested athletes. It is a naturally occurring amino acid. So, anyone who is WADA, WADA or ASADA or whatever, sanctioned, they can still utilize injectable carnitine. But yeah, so your main benefits in terms of performance standpoint are going to come through changing the density and efficiency of androgen receptors, given that it is the main or one of the transporters of fat to the mitochondria to be able to allow fat to be utilized as energy. There is going to be an increase in fat burning and body composition effect there. And then from the health side of things, as I've mentioned with the cardio tissue modeling, having a big impact, especially on our particular population of athletes. But it also has some benefits with improving things like lipid profile through also increasing fat metabolism. The same things that it's helping, the same reasons it's helping with weight loss and fat loss. It is also going to improve your lipid metabolism and lipid profiles by improving the way your body's able to metabolize these cholesterol particles within your body. Again, cholesterol is another huge issue that performance-enhancing drug or anabolic steroid using individuals face. Something that almost all clients I deal with will see derangement in at some point or another throughout a cycle. Even some people see derangement continue beyond their cycles. So yeah, cholesterol, given it is another area that is very hard to control on cycle, I do think carnitine is a good tool that can potentially be used to help mitigate some of those effects whilst on cycle, or even if you're not on cycle and you just have some lipid issues, mainly through high lipids, whether that be triglycerides or LDL or whatnot. Carnitine could certainly be a tool that you could possibly utilize in improving that. There are quite a few different benefits to carnitine. It's really, it depends how deep you want to get into it and how much nuance you want to go into. I will give one of my secrets away and say that I do personally stay on it year round, purely from the health side of things. The fact it gives a performance-enhancing benefit is a bonus. Even if there were no performance-enhancing benefits to carnitine, I would still take it year round personally. And I do recommend most of my clients in the performance-enhancing worlds do take it as a precautionary measure as well. It's definitely a supplement that I think is underutilized, and one that has kind of gone with the fad train. It went it was really big when it first hit the market 10 years or so ago. And mainly because the oral form being very low bioavailable, I think a lot of people realised it wasn't doing too much, especially through the oral form. So a lot of people discounted it completely and counted it as almost a useless supplement. But in the last couple of years, it's really started to pop its way back up through the industry, especially in the injectable form. And yeah, I definitely think it is something that it should be a part of most performance-enhancing drug using athletes' protocol purely from a standpoint of being able to reverse or prevent the left ventricular hypertrophy, control lipid metabolism. I personally found a profound effect on blood pressure control as well. Not everyone will see that, but there is, I personally, and in some of my clients as well, have seen between a 5 and even up to a 10 point systolic increase in blood pressure when introducing carnitine into the protocol. There's quite a few benefits with carnitine, and as a performance-enhancing drug user, almost anything you will ever take in terms of performance-enhancing drugs is going to have a negative impact on your health. There's very few things you can take that both give you a performance benefit and a health benefit. There's usually a bit of give and take with it. Whilst carnitine certainly is not going to provide any of the performance-enhancing benefits to the same magnitude as steroids or human growth hormone or anything that's hardcore like that, I think the fact that you are getting some performance enhancement still, but absolutely zero drawback on the health side of things, other than possibly incorrect injections or an infection from the injection itself, and not the drug or the amino acid really. I think it's really a no-brainer. There's no drawbacks to it, and you are still seeing a fairly notable improvement in performance through the use of the compounds. So, to me, it's just, you take all these things that are bad for you, and if you're willing to take these things that are having a health cost for the performance benefit, then I think you should also be willing to take things that have zero health ramification with a performance benefit attached to it as well.
And so that was not you going on a tangent.
That was me being direct and concise. And I didn't give you a dosage either,
There you go.
which I'm not going to.
No.
I think dosing is something should be individualized, and you should contact a coach like myself if you would like dosing schedules.
Or just take as much as you can.
Or just take all of it.
Take all
if
of
you
it.
do take all of it, be fair warned, you will smell like fish. It
There you
stinks.
go.
It smells like fish. And I mean, TMI, but your poo will stink like fish.
There you go. You don't want your poo stinking like fish. You want your poo smelling good, right? I know mine does, so I want to make sure I stay away from that. So that is going to be the end of segment 4 and this podcast. This is a little learning thing for me and Connor, and we have moved the podcast twice now. This is a slightly better environment, but it is still hot. So we're going to try and work with things in the future, and we want to get to a point where maybe we're a little bit more.
Or if one of your listeners owns an air conditioning business and would like to get on with sponsoring this podcast,
Yeah.
both me and Jacob are willing to do, well, honestly, mainly me, maybe Jacob, willing to do lots of things for an air conditioner. So
I've done some.
I don't know.
I've done some not great things for air conditioners in the past.
Me too.
so
I've done some really shady things for some air conditioning.
I can imagine. So Connor's probably going to pass out if we kept going. So one of the main things that we aim to achieve in this podcast, and where I want it to become more of a conversation between the two, is that me and Connor live very differently, and not because either of them are right or wrong, but because we choose to. And the biggest problem I think with people now is that they're either not making a choice or they're making a choice that's uneducated. So they're either doing nothing and not getting decent benefits in any way because they can't fucking figure out which way they want to go, or they're making a decision because they're on the other end and they're just being super impulsive and they're not actually really interested in finding out why that decision may be the right one for them to make. I'm not saying that you should never take drugs and try to get everything you possibly can from food and blah, 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 and kind of go in my direction. I'm also not an athlete and I don't plan to be. Connor is on the opposite end of that in trying to be, but also successfully being an extremely strong individual and a great athlete. He didn't want to call himself that. And I know that he's sweating right now and you might think, that guy doesn't necessarily look like he's that comfortable.
No, I'm not.
This is peak performance right here.
This is peak performance.
This is peak performance. So the point being is,
if you're not sweating, you're not performing. That's the point.
that's part of the point, I think. That's definitely part of it. But the bigger thing is people in the industry have argued, like me and Connor, for a long time. Me and Connor could argue, but we are creating a conversation instead because it's a lot more important to do so. And I want to definitely explore a lot more about being natural and the things that you can do and focus on those things. And I also want to keep exploring the world of science with Connor because I don't know too many people that are as open-minded as yourself that are willing to try things, and you've had experiences with things a lot of people haven't. So the goal is to do that. If you are listening and you want us to talk about certain things, get involved. Try to give us those things to talk about. We're picking things at the
It's
moment.
the podcast of the people.
Podcast of the people. We're picking things at the moment that people are suggesting, but also because they're things that are relevant to us. I personally went through a couple of things where I was looking into my heart and things like that, and it was a conversation me and Connor had. So things like omega-3s came up, and things like, sleep or getting things tested, blood pressure, all these things came up, and they were health concerns that I was having and making sure that I was getting them focused on, as opposed to just not doing anything about it or being extremely impulsive. I looked at what the problem was. I found out the ways to try and understand what the problem was, and then I, step by step, tried to work those things out. So hopefully you can do the same with some of the things we're learning, even if you've just taken on something from the sleep section or something we spoke about. Neither of us are fucking scientists, but we both like to do what we're doing, and we like the human body. So the other thing is this giveaway. I just literally have no need to get a bunch of supplements and keep them to myself. I'm happy to pay for supplements. I much prefer to be able to actually give this sort of stuff away because it doesn't take a hell of a lot from me, and it with Supplement Mart getting involved, and Connor also has knowledge from his side of things, we can really try to set people up to either maybe start taking the things that they need to take or just help them find better sources of it. So to go over these once again really quickly, if you want to go through it, we got creatine, this one right here. We have the fish oil, all right? This is pretty standard fish oil, that one. And then the essential aminos from Rule 1. We have the Pillar vitamin D supplement, and we also have the triple magnesium. Now, to wash all this shit down, Thirst Trap is going to accommodate that. Also, you can get a free remedial massage from Zoe, and you can go get in the sauna. So you can take all this shit, sweat it all out, take it all again. You're not going to sweat most of it out, but you understand what I'm saying. It was a little, you get it. Connor gets it.
I got it.
He gets it, right? The other thing I'm going to say is shout out to Achievement Apex and Power Pit Rockingham, as always. Big shout out to Ped Test Australia and Bulk Gym Chalk and Supplement Mart Rockingham. I'm starting to forget. It's just too many now, all right? Thanks to Connor for being here.
Thanks for having me once again.
As always, my pleasure. And thanks to Maggie for just making all the camera work.
Towel on my forehead.
Helping with the towel intermissions, all of that shit.
This has been All or Nothing, episode 2, episode 128 of the Porta Potty. Look at me go. All in one. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time.